Hello and welcome to a Lake Washington School District video tutorial on what to do with my Haiku rosters at the semester. Now before we get into the specifics of that, what I'd like to talk about is a little bit about the rules of setting up a Haiku class site. That way we can make sure we all understand 3 simple rules that you should always follow. And they are manually create your Haiku class site. Secondly, link Skyward rosters to the class you created. And then finally, students cannot appear in a Haiku class more than once. Now let's talk about each of these specifically. First, manually create your Haiku class site. Here's how this works. Skyward generates a listing of your rosters for your classes and then transfers that information over to Haiku. You then see that information in Haiku in the form of a listing of class codes. Those class codes tell you the course it is, the period it is, and the semester it is. The point is, these classes are simply acting as placeholders for the rosters that Skyward has transferred over to Haiku. What this also means is that you shouldn't use those as a means to build your Haiku class. What you should do is manually create a Haiku class all your own. That way, whether you want to destroy that class, whether you have a great idea for altering it in some way over the course of the semester or year, or you want to drastically change that class, you don't have any fear of actually changing the Skyward class that was originally created. How do you learn how to make a class? Well, that's easy. You go to portal.new.lwsd.org. And then all you have to do is in the search box provided is do a search for Haiku-create a class. You can also find the Haiku help area in the new portal. The second rule is link Skyward rosters to the class you created. What that means is you take the Skyward generated classes you found in Haiku and you link and import those to the manually created class that you created in Haiku. When you do this, you establish a communication link that makes it so that you don't have to manually update your rosters. It's all done automatically for you with the communication between Skyward and Haiku. What happens is, if you have manually added students to your roster, or you've done a one-time import, or you have some type of roster conflict, what that does is that you've never actually established that link or you've broken that link in some way. And that means if you want to make changes to your roster, you have to do it manually. Now, how do you learn about linking rosters? Again, go to portalnew.lwsd.org and then do a search for Haiku-linking rosters. Now, the third rule was students cannot appear in a Haiku class more than once. Here's what that means. When you create a class in Haiku, you of course typically want to link a roster to that class. What has happened is some people have linked a second roster to that class. Where the problem occurs is when you link a second roster that shares information with the first roster. The first roster could be a first semester class, and the second roster could be a second semester class, or it could be that you have 2 different classes that you teach and you're trying to link both of those classes into one Haiku class. Some of these students are unique to each roster, but the other students are duplicates. What this causes is a communication conflict in Haiku, and it will ignore one of those duplicates. What this means is it'll cause incorrect information in your sections because Haiku is ignoring some of the students from one of those rosters. This is not something that you should do. How do you learn how to link rosters? Again, same thing, portalnew.lwsd.org and then search for Haiku-linking rosters. There's also one in there that might be helpful called unlinking rosters. Well, what went wrong with your first semester rosters? It's typically one of 3 different things. Either 1, those Skyward generated classes that you found, you took one of those and created a class from that. That's something you shouldn't do. Or 2, You linked in a roster to your Haiku class, then linked a secondary roster which had some duplicate students which caused a conflict in the information. Again, that's something you shouldn't do. Or third, you either manually linked students to your roster, or did a one-time import, or did some other combination of these other two, which also caused conflicts in your roster. The point is, it's also something you probably shouldn't have done. Now what do you do for second semester, now that you know what the problems are? Well, you really have two main options. The first option is this: fix it. What you do when you're fixing it is you're going to save and make a copy of the class that you currently have so that you can use that new class with new rosters, linking those rosters to that class. All you need to do is go to Portal New at lwsd.org, do a search for Semester Transition, Save Class Link Roster, or do a search for Saving Haiku Class LWSD. That one's a video. What you're doing in this instance is copying and saving a new class and then linking those second semester rosters to that class. You have to be aware, though, that you're saving all your teacher content, but student content will not be transferred to the new class. Things like a discussion board postings that might have been going on in first semester, those postings will not be transferred to the copy or saved class, but the setup for the discussion board will. What that means is you will still be able to have access to the student work in that first class, but students will not be able to have access to that class because you're using a brand new copied version of the class. Now, the second option is this: you can carry on with your current setup. Now, just realize that this is a learning year and you'll get it right in the next school year. But what this does mean is that you'll have to manually update your rosters if you do have a incorrectly set up roster currently. You may have to add or remove students as the new semester comes in, depending on whether you have new students in that class. Now also be aware that if you did things correctly, though, and you did a manually created class and you linked in only first semester rosters and you have no conflicts in your rosters, then for the second semester it's fairly easy. All you need to do is unlink your current first semester rosters and then link second semester rosters. So remember, don't stress the rosters too much. This is a learning year. If you need help, contact your SMOS facilitators in your building. You can also contact Help Desk for them to help walk you through this process. And we at the Technology Integration team at the Resource Center are also there to help. So have a great rest of the year.